Alright guys, so here's another example of determining the properties of irrational functions. So this will be example 2. Okay, so just further practice. Again, they're asking you to find the properties of this rational function. They want the domain, the range, and the asymptotes. Okay, so again, here's our basic equation of a rational function. And here we have the rational function in question that they want us to determine the properties of. Okay, so like the previous problem, we're going to first find the domain and range. Okay, so I'm just going to put D and R here for domain and range. So remember, our domain will always be our H value. So what did I have to plug in to H here in order to get positive 2? Well, that's going to be negative 2, right? Because two negatives make a positive. All right, so my H value here is 2. So for my domain, I'm going to have all real numbers except x cannot equal 2. I'm sorry, negative 2. All right. Again, if we plug in a negative 2 here, we get positive 2. All right. For our range now, well, we'll have the same thing, all real numbers, except y cannot equal, and again, our range here is going to be our k value. Well, that's going to be 4, so y cannot equal 4. All right, so this is now done. We just found the domain and range. Our second step here is to determine the asymptotes and go ahead and graph this rational function. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our graph. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's do this fairly quick. There we go. And again, you always want to go ahead and put on your vertical and horizontal asymptotes before graphing it by hand because it acts as a guide, okay, and it makes graphing it by hand much easier. Right? So remember, your vertical asymptote is always going to be what you've got for your domain. Well, it's going to be all real numbers except negative 2. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go on negative 2 on the x, so 1, 2, and this is going to be my vertical asymptote. Okay, there it is. So again, your vertical asymptote coincides with your domain, right? And vice versa. Your horizontal asymptote is going to coincide with your range, which we found was going to be cannot equal 4. So we're going to go 4 on the y, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to make a horizontal asymptote here. Okay, so just to reiterate, your vertical asymptote coincides with your domain, and your horizontal asymptote coincides with your range. All right. So we're almost done with this problem. Our last step is to go ahead and just graph the rational function. But again, like the previous example, we need to pick some x values here so we can kind of get the basic shape of this. All right. And then once we have that basic shape, we can draw it by respecting these asymptotes. Okay. So it's pretty easy. We're just going to pick to the left, right, of our vertical asymptote here. So if we're at negative 2 here, let's just pick negative 3 and see where this puts us on the y, right? So I'm going to put in a negative 3 here for x, right? And I'll get the following. I get 1 over negative 3 plus 2, which is going to be negative 1 plus 4. Well, this is negative 1 plus 4, right? Which we know is going to equal 3 here. So when I go over negative, let's do this in purple, when I go over negative 3, because that's what we plugged in for x, so when I go over negative 3, I get the following for my y, which is going to be 3, right? So then I go up 3, and that puts us right below this horizontal asymptote, right about here, right? Knowing that, we can now draw in our rational function by respecting both the horizontal and vertical asymptote. So we have the following. And again, those asymptotes are what the curve approaches but doesn't actually touch. Okay? Let's figure out the right side now. So we're going to pick to the right here. So again, let's just pick let's pick 2 here. Alright, let's pick 2, and let's determine what we get. So we get 1 over 2 plus 2 is 4, and then plus 4, so we're going to get the following, we'll get 4 1/4. Okay, so you get 4 1/4. So when we go over 2, so when I go over 2, I get the following. So I go over 2, I get 4 1/4, right? Well, here's my horizontal asymptote at 4, so I'm right above that. So I'm going to make a point right above that. And again, we can go ahead and graph this by respecting both asymptotes here, and we can get the shape of our function. Right? And this problem is now complete.